So this guy was a one percenter. One percenter means that they've killed a rival, they've killed a police officer, they're an enforcer for their own motorcycle gang, which means if one of their own steps out of line, they check them, beat them up, whatever. Or if a rival gang does something, they go and make it right by violence. So he had his one percenter patch, and he was out on parole, and like bad guys do, he raped a 12-year-old girl while out on parole. When he came out of the back door, he had a big chrome-plated 357 up here like this, and I was at I was directly perpendicular to him, so I didn't see it until he brought it down and put it in his pocket. And I remember thinking, okay, that's his one freebie. My mindset was I'm not playing at all. He reacted to the shot. He brought the pistol right up in, like leveled off to have a gunfight, which then I reacted to that. And this is all my mind playing all this in slow motion. And so I just started letting him have it with the AR. He was on so much meth and cocaine. He was like a zombie, man. He just was taking it, and he just kept staggering around. I think that Matt and I would have been separate had we not both been in this profession together. I think there would have been a pretty big disconnect, because it is hard. Like I said earlier, you're a cop or you're not.
You're listening to the ATO Bridging the Divide podcast, brought to you by the Assist the Officer Foundation.
Since 1999, the ATO has given assistance to the first responder community, and now we want to give them a platform to hear their incredible stories.
We also want to hear the stories of the many people that support us.
Our community is small, but it is strong.
We have differences. We don't always agree, and we all make mistakes.
But together we can grow, we can heal,
And we can learn from those mistakes.
and together we can bridge the divide.
Destiny is that which we are drawn towards, and fate is that which we run into. Wyatt Earp. This episode will unveil a new voice and also bring back an old friend to the show. But the listeners may find it hard to tell the voices apart as we welcome back twins to the show. Two men that have dedicated their lives to the profession, but from two different cities. The city of Dallas is grateful for our neighbors out west, the great city of Fort Worth. Alongside its modern industries and contemporary skyscrapers, Fort Worth retains much of the flavor of its Old West heritage. Founded in 1849 by Major Ripley Allen Arnold as a military outpost against the Comanche raids, it was named for Major General William Jenkins Worth, commander of U.S. troops in Texas at the time. On March 1st, 1873, the city of Fort Worth was incorporated, and on April 12th of that year, E.M. Terrell was appointed the first city marshal with a force of 4 policemen. Today's department has nearly 1,800 sworn, and they maintain early traditions of wearing Stetson cowboy hats. Today's guest has nearly 2 decades of serving this great city. He is the father of 2 boys and 2 girls, and his 6-time world champion wife, Karen, keeps them all in line. Lieutenant David Grossman once said, "If you have no capacity for violence, then you are a healthy, productive citizen, a sheep. If you have a capacity for violence and no empathy for your fellow citizens, then you have defined an aggressive sociopath, a wolf. What if you have a capacity for violence and a deep love for your fellow citizens? What do you have then? A sheepdog, a warrior, someone who is walking the hero's path, someone who can walk into the heart of darkness, into the universal human phobia, and walk out unscathed. Today's guest and his twin brother Matt are the sheepdogs. Fort Worth PD Sergeant Scott Baines. This story is long overdue. Before we get rolling, I want to welcome on a very special guest, co-host, all the way from Rhode Island, Rich Parenti. Rich, say hello.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me. As you said, I'm a police officer in Scituate, Rhode Island, 17 years in the job. I'm currently the supervisor of our school policing unit. I am a avid listener of this podcast, and I listened to Matt's episode, and I'm very excited for the opportunity to sit down on Scott's.
Well, welcome to Texas, man. Thanks for being here. Lieutenant Lisette Rivera, she's a good friend of yours, and she invited you down, and we're always happy to welcome on folks to come and sit in for these shows. You're going to see really how low rent we are, but the production actually comes out good. I got my partner Kent Wolverton here. He's always on the mic. Another special guest co-host. You've heard the very soothing voice in episode 5. You heard him face the dragon in episode 6. He came back for more in episode 19 with the great Darian Loera. And then he weaseled his way on with Will Chesney, the Navy SEAL, in 20 and 21. And then he had another idea to come back up on the mic. I mean, his guy's been on the damn show more than I have. In episode 29, in the Dynamic Warrants episode, he was narcotics part. He is a living legend. He makes other males feel substandard in his presence. I want to welcome on the great Matt Baines.
Well, thank you, Joe. I'm just going to sit here like I always do.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, we'll just dub a voice in like a British accent later for you.
I just forgot we have rules when we have twins on that sound so similar. One of you has to use either an Australian or English accent the entire time. And Matt, I'm going to go with you since you've been on here a couple times.
Can I just talk with a lisp?
Yeah,
Perfect.
you can do that. Yeah,
Perfect.
that will distinguish your voice from Scott.
Do you have a good day, mate?
No.
No. Man, he's red as hell. Okay. Scott, you ready to get into this?
Yeah, let's do it.
This is at Matt's request. We are doing this all shirtless, and
Except
and Matt didn't get the memo. He came in with the chaps, but hey, he looks good though. I want to get into this. I want to get into early home life with you two. You're identical twins. You're actually the second group of identical twins we've had on. We had the Candelaria superpower twins come in, but I want to get into growing up Baines, which probably is not like growing up Kardashian, but I want to get into talk about early home life.
So a lot of the stuff that Matt said on the previous podcast is
Made up.
It's actually I would have described it the same way. Our upbringing, I pretty much concur with everything he said.
You sound like you have a very loving family, a very loving home life, and a lot of connection there.
Yeah, there's 4 boys, and we were all pretty close growing up, and my parents are great. They're still married, so we didn't have a divorce or anything like that to deal with, So, yeah, I mean, I have the best childhood that any person could ever have.
Having Matt as a brother, we learn with Gabe and Brian Candelaria, there's always differences in these twins. So what was your personality versus what you thought Matt's was growing up?
So growing up, I would say that Matt and I, being identical twins, we gravitated to exactly the same things. We were identical pretty much in every way. We looked identical. We still look very, very similar. Same hobbies.
You're much more handsome.
Oh, thank you.
You are.
You have bigger biceps, too, I noticed.
He's showing off the pipes today.
I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to be quiet.
But I would say that, growing up with Matt, as far as he and I's relationship, it was about 16 or 17 years old where things kind of changed from, like, he was more of the follower through childhood, it was me more of the leader, and then at 16, 17, that kind of changed. We
reverse roles.
Yeah, well, we moved, and so we were freshmen. We started freshman in our freshman year at a high school in Garland, Naaman Forest, and so by the time we were sophomores, all the friends that we had, and he didn't have friends that I didn't have, and I didn't have friends that he didn't have. So they were our friends. If there was a best friend, it was Matt and I's best friend, you know, and he made all those friends for us. So that's when things kind of, I guess he kind of came out of a shell maybe, or blossomed a little bit. This is just my perspective looking back on, you know, childhood and everything. Then we went to college together, which was kind of another thing, him kind of following me.
Where was that?
Baylor. And so I went to Baylor. His test scores, SATs, whatever it was we took back then, wasn't quite high enough. And so he got stuck going to McLennan County Community College out there.
Okay.
And so,
shout out McLennan County.
Yeah, heck yeah, MCC, remember?
Oh, yeah.
And so we were roommates our freshman year. I'm at Baylor. He's down the road at the community college. And then by the time our sophomore year came along in college, he was like, I'm out. This college thing isn't for me. I'm going to the military. And it was kind of an unspoken thing that was his plan, his idea, his route, not ours. And that was the first time. I'm like 19 years old, and boom, you know, all of a sudden.
The plan is splitting.
Yeah, and I didn't see it coming, you know.
How'd you feel about that?
Abandoned.
Yeah.
Scared, and he was frightened.
Yeah.
Alone.
But it was like that was the first time, you know, that and then that I guess would be like an example of him being independent and his leadership and stuff, and him going off kind of going his own way, you know.
What did you learn about yourself though once you were out on your own there, and you were in Baylor, and Baylor's a big school, and that's at Waco, that's a pretty sweet town up there. What'd you learn about yourself?
That, you know, you got to stand on your own 2 feet. You know, it was great having your best friend with you, especially growing up, you know. I remember if somebody ever messed with one of us. In fact, the very first fist fight I ever got into, elementary school, probably 4th grade. And I'm walking across the playground, and this dude, I had no idea who this guy was. And Matt and I were in different classes. So Matt and this kid had beef, apparently. Something happened earlier in the day. I didn't know anything about it. And he comes up and starts just running his mouth, talking trash. And I'm so confused, you know. And eventually I figure out, oh, he thinks I'm Matt.
Yeah, Matt pissed him off.
Right, and I wasn't even angry until then. And I was like, this dude is saying this about, you don't talk about my brother, you know. So then I'm like, all right, let's, you know. So I remember, bam, I nailed him right in the face, punched him, and he just took it. And he stood there staring at me. And I'm like, oh, that's not the reaction I was hoping.
You got to whistle.
I hit him, man. I hit him, and there was the crowd had gathered, you know, like you see, and I hit him like 1 or 2 more times, and he never even flinched, never moved. And finally, he just started crying, and I was like, okay,
I got him.
I made it out alive. And I look up, dude, on the swing set on the playground. There's Matt hanging over the edge. Way up here, you know, staring down, watching us, and I'm like, you.
Hey, am I the only one that pictures both these dudes in elementary school, bald-headed and with beards? Like,
oh yeah, that's the only way I can imagine it. Yeah, all jacked, bald, and beards.
So going back to, you had your best friend with you your entire life. My 2 oldest sons are really, really close, and they're 2 years apart. So my oldest is about to graduate high school, and I'm really concerned about how my middle one's going to handle it, because they've always been, you know, where there's one, there's the other. How did you handle that stuff? Like, what did you get into, or how did you cope with that?
Man, I found another best friend. I mean, twins might have some codependency stuff going on, you know, and so you know, you as a father, you got to be looking out. You already are, you know, you're aware that that's a possibility, so you got to be looking out for that, because I think that's a real thing. You know, Matt being the one that left, pursuing his adventure, and especially the military, you go into boot camp. I mean, they own every part of you, especially during the boot camp. You don't have time for codependency issues or to miss family or whatever. Right. You're, you know, trying to just survive, you know. But the one that gets left behind, that, you know, it was a new thing for me, you know.
Did y'all stay tight communicating though?
Oh yeah, man.
Okay,
yeah, dude, we're on this crazy wavelength. We would meet up.
Probably communicating right now, just not even talking.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
We'd see each other after it had been months, and we would have bought the same, just back when CDs were music, you know, bought the same exact albums. He'd buy a new felt cowboy hat, so would I. You know.
Y'all both had the Straight Out of the Box, George Strait box set at the same time. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And we shared that 1979 GMC. I mean, we had one vehicle between us. We were going to the same places anyway, so Looking back, it was, complete parallel lives, all the way up until whenever it was I decided to ship off to boot camp. So.
Matt, when you were out there, because it's a void for Scott, but it's also a void for you, and it changed up from you, and you're kind of out on your own as well, and also you had, and military's type is like police, and you're going to gain all this new friends and military family. How was that for you?
As you would imagine, just a complete culture shock. But as I guess depressing as it was, like he described, you kind of didn't have a choice. You could either curl up and cry or just push through it. And boot camp for me, I had a blast, because they tried to mentally break you, they physically pushed you, and it was not a challenge to me, any of that stuff, being away from the family, and then even after boot camp, being out in patrol out in the Caribbean, out in the middle of the ocean, just no one knows you're out there, no one cares you're out there, and you kind of feel pointless. That was the more difficult stuff. When I knew he was back at college, having the parties and all the social life and all the good times we were having down at Baylor, and I was totally missing out on that. But I also knew that it was time to grow up, and so just become a young man, which is what I did, and I didn't, I enjoyed it.
Then you made your way back, and we know your story once you got back and where you went. When you got back from college, Scott, what did you do?
So I got back from college about a year before he got out of the Coast Guard, and so I had launched a career in construction. And I tried to get into law enforcement, but I was so naive and immature. I thought, hey, I'm going to take my Baylor degree and come walk into whichever police department I so desire and tell them.
Roll out the carpet.
Yeah, and tell them what day I'll be starting and what my salary is going to be, and they'll be lucky to have me. Reality slap. Here
what
it is.
What year was that?
98.
Yeah. It wasn't like that back then.
No. And
now they're begging people to come, but it ain't like that back
then. No. There was the line of applicants back then, So anyway, I had found myself, months and months out of graduation. This is back in 90. Remember, .com was brand new, and email, and you was what's email? Why would if I want to mail somebody? Yeah. And so, can you remember what the economy was like? They were putting Baylor grads on private corporate jets, flying us to Northeast, and offering them $65,000 entry level positions. And so, all my buddies from Baylor were employed, and I was still waiting for this 9-month hiring process, which was going nowhere for law enforcement. So anyway, I got into construction, and by the time Matt gets back, now he's out of the military, and again he kind of comes to me, and I get him a job with me on we were building the American Airlines arena.
Really?
When it was, there used to be, you've been here, so
Hillwood?
Yeah. So you remember that was the old cooling pond?
Well, they had that. Yeah, they had. It wasn't much over there. It was real industrial when they had that Baby Doe's at that restaurant. It was that was really all that was over there.
Yeah, and there was that little lake, that miniature lake that those sprinkler spigots came up out of, and there was an electrical switch, big electrical station there. Anyway, we demolished all that, scooped it all the way out to dirt. And Matt was a big part of that.
Well, how did you get that? Because I would imagine that bid was probably pretty hard to get. How did y'all get that?
So the contractor I was working for was a remediation. We did all the cleanup, because that was also the original city of Dallas dump. So we were pulling out. Dallas burned down way back in I don't know what year it was, but half of the city burned down, and so it was hundreds of years old, 100-year-old burnt rubble. And Model A cars and all kind of stuff.
Treasures.
It was. But that's a whole other story. So I got Matt a job out there with me, and it took him about 6 months of corporate America to be like, yeah, okay, I see. And again, his leadership or his initiative, rather, he goes out and he's like, hell or high water, I'm going to be a cop.
And at that time, did you lose the at that point lose appetite or interest in wanting to be a cop? You said you tried right off, but
yeah, I hadn't lost the interest. I would try a few times, but man. When you got a lucrative career that I had,
you were going to make money being a cop.
Yeah, right, and it just kind of held me, and I didn't make a real hard push. But when Matt got hired on at Dallas, I went, oh man, okay, I need to do this. Yeah. I need to do. So I went and put in for Dallas, and I didn't get hired by Dallas.
What year was that?
Matt, when did you get on here?
2001.
Okay,
so it would have been 01, 02. Yeah.
Damn, what?
Yeah, it was just
and were you trying to get in the same, or he was already hired on, then you try to get?
Yeah, he got his little offer letter, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, man, I've wanted to do this. We've wanted to do this since we can remember, and so I went and didn't make it through the process, and just stayed in construction.
Okay, because you already had something going anyway that was making more money than. So, were you married at the time?
Yes.
Okay, and who? You want to say her name? Or?
Yeah, Tiana, my first wife.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
At what point did you just finally go, I got to get in on this? I'm sure Matt's coming home and you're hanging out and he's telling some stories in the Northeast.
Man, you nailed it. That's exactly. And so I'm traveling all over the place, all over the country. And people that don't do that, they think, oh, that's so prestigious and that's great. And,
living at a hotel.
And, man, you don't work out. You don't eat right. You don't. Everything, your whole schedule is jacked. You
got the shitty hotel pillows.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm making great money, but I'm sitting in these airplanes going to all these corporate things, and I'm looking at the guys that are 10 years down the road from me, 10 years my senior, and they're a walking heart attack, stressed out, making a lot of money. But, then I'm looking at Matt, and we're neighbors at this time, okay? We live right next door to each other in Saxe. And, he's getting in these car chases and chasing bad guys and just has stories to tell, and I'm like, I got to the point where, I closed another $3 million deal and I could care less,
Just unhappy.
Yeah. Man, I don't know. Unhappy.
Not fulfilled.
Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't you weren't, as a person, weren't fulfilled in what you had going.
Right.
Especially when you had your best friend, your identical twin.
Doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And the cop, police career gives you something. I don't know where else you find it. I'm sure there's maybe some other profession, but
greatest show on earth. I mean, at what point did you finally say, I'm going to do this again and start putting out applications?
So 7 years, I was in construction 7 years, and then I was 30 years old. I'm 50. So it's 20 years ago. I was 30 years old in the academy.
And they were moving you up to like management positions, and it was like time to put up or shut up.
I had a fork in the road, man. My three options were, they told me, the company I was working for said, go start a branch, go open a branch in Minneapolis, Minnesota, or Arizona. Option two was, and I was real close on this, start my own business. And I still wonder if I should have done that.
Us together, and I'm still mad at him for that because we would have done good. And then 2008 hit, so I don't know if we would have been mature enough to survive that, or if we'd have been out there just spending money like fools and crashed like a lot of people.
But I had it lined out. I mean, I had contractors telling me, writing me letters of guarantee. I had $2 million of business that was promised to me on my first year. So I mean, I could have, broke even, paid for all the whole company, on the first year. But anyway, and option three was go be a cop.
So you went through option 1 and 2, and you decided I'm gonna join Matt. So we're gonna get into where you're working now, but when you decided I'm going to do this, I'm gonna walk away from this other thing. Did you think about applying for Dallas again, or did you?
I think I did, but I think Fort Worth hired me first, and I think Fort Worth just beat him to the
Dallas
punch.
wanted you to. They said your polygraph was like inconclusive.
Yeah.
And wanted you to take it again, and, which pissed me off, of course, know.
And the thing was, I said, what is the hang? What question? Where are we stuck? And they said, cocaine. And I had never even seen cocaine until I was a patrol officer. I remember that's to somebody who doesn't grow up with that, that was a very, very profound thing for me. I remember being a rookie patrol officer in Northside. I remember the street I was on and going, wow, this is cocaine.
This is what kept me out of Dallas.
Yeah.
No, that does suck because those polygraphs, because they're very, you can get 10 different polygraphers taking a test and you'll get probably 9 different readouts. I'd like to see you in a Dallas uniform, but.
Oh, I think it was maybe a God thing. I don't know. Matt and I together in Dallas, first of all, could we have maintained professionalism?
No way.
It'd have been a wild ride to watch it.
Oh, we'd have been jacking with people so bad, man.
I'd cut him off in a car chase.
I can see that. Y'all to be ramming each other, get the damn pitting each other,
swapping shifts,
showing
up and taking credit for each other's homework.
Yeah. He'd have to fight your fights like you did on the playground. So I want to describe Fort Worth PD. You're the first person we've had on from the great city of Fort Worth. Can you describe the size of the PD? It is out west of Dallas. Everybody here is DFW, and there are neighbors and there are brothers and sisters over there. Can you describe that department?
Yeah, I don't have anything negative to say about Fort Worth PD. I feel so lucky, blessed actually, that Fort Worth worked out. The only thing that I regret was that Matt and I couldn't have been on the department together, be it Fort Worth, be it Dallas, whatever, But Fort Worth is just under 2,000 officers, so it's a lot bigger than people realize. I think we're the 12th.
It's a big department.
Yeah, 12th largest city in the United States, give or take. And so it is a big department. And when I first started, man, it was still just so old school. You remember the Fort Worth PD, I think, is what put cops on the book. Like we had the best cops episodes. If you look for cops, everybody wants to see Fort Worth PD. And it was still like that when I started. And
in what year?
2005. 2005.
Okay.
Yeah. And so and you knew everybody because it was small enough then, but Fort Worth exploded the population, and so the police department has to keep up with that growth. So now there's, I don't know what there was, 1,000. Now there's almost 2,000 police officers.
And growing. Probably hire you around like we do.
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of attrition?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But Fort Worth PD has all the units you can have, SWAT, K-9 gang, SRT, all the specialized units, narcotics, and you can actually get into them. If you want to be in a specialized unit, do good in patrol. All it takes is to have a good reputation in patrol, and then put in for specialized units. If you don't get it the first time, just keep trying. You can get into a specialized unit.
We always talk about reputations matter, and on this show, going back to when we started, and they do matter. They matter here in Dallas too. If you get a shitty reputation early on, whether it's right, wrong, or in the kind of somewhere in between, it's hard to shake.
It is. That's the unfortunate thing about our profession, because how many of us, me included, you too, have done some stuff where you're like, man, you look back on it, you're like, dude, I never would do that.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of redos I would like to have, but also I've seen some other people kind of like, Danny Canetti, that have had little shit held over him for years.
Yeah, we don't let it go, do we? I
Right.
don't know what that is about us.
So what's the length of that the academy you went through?
It's real similar to Dallas. Dallas and Fort Worth,
Okay.
very similar. I think 8 or 9 months. Yeah.
Since you kind of already probably had a really good feel of police life, police work, just from you always wanting to do it, and then hearing Matt's stories. What surprised you most about the academy, and then when you got out in the street? Well, for one, we always hear people in the academy, and it's a sterile environment, and you're there, and it's training. But once you get out on the streets, of how faster the pace is.
Yeah. So there's people that listen to this. Some of them can probably relate that some people, I guess, a personality trait, have a very, very strong sense of a call to duty. And I think if a person doesn't have that, then they're not going to get what I'm talking about. So, they can push pause or something for a second. But and so growing up, not in a military family, and now 30 years old, and I just never, and I had that call to duty or to serve or whatever. And so PD boot camp, academy was like just what Matt said. Oh, this is fun. I got it. I know what they're trying to do. And, I played the game, and it was not painful or miserable at all for me. I was like felt like I was a professional athlete, getting paid to work out and eat, and learn.
Well, you're a lot more mature probably than you're 30. You already you weren't as young as were you one of the older ones in the academy?
Yeah, I was. Okay. Yeah. And so, I thrived in the academy. It was fine, and enjoyed it. And I was getting that military or that call to duty itch scratched, And then, Joe, what was your other question?
No, just what struck you about the pace from the academy to the streets?
Yeah, for sure. So in Fort Worth, as I'm sure same as Dallas, when you come out of the academy, you are a fine-tuned machine. You're looking around. You can't pass a gas station without looking in there. Is it getting robbed? Does anybody need my help? And so that's the way I was, man. I was high-speed rookie for sure. And one of the most surprising things about police work was 80% of it is crime on crime. I never thought about I guess the spectrum of victim. Like you can be an actual pure victim like a child,
but you could be a contributor to the
or you could be so complicit in your own BS situation that and unfortunately the reality of policing is it is mostly that. It's what'd you think was going to happen? Don't put on boxing gloves, get in the boxing ring, get punched in the face, and say you got assaulted. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, or don't drive over here to South Dallas from Garland or Mesquite to pick up a prostitute, and when you get robbed or you get don't act just shocked that it happened.
Pretend like you're an innocent victim.
Yeah. So what you said you're high speed. What kind of work did you gravitate to?
Man, if it wasn't a felony, I wasn't interested, And Fort Worth, like Dallas, you can choose. In big departments like this, what kind of cop are you going to be? Are you going to go and babysit the stop sign and work in Fort Worth to be north of the loop, where you're going to have vehicle accidents, suicides from people working, living outside their means, or go into the hood? And I really gravitated. My best friend in college was a Hispanic guy, and I was going down to Eagle Pass all the time, right on the border. And so I just fell in love with the Mexican culture and everything, So, and the Fort Worth Stockyards is surrounded by a north side, which is a Hispanic community. So I was like, dude, Fort Worth poster child cop is like a Stockyards cop,
Cowboy hat.
Yeah, handlebar mustache and all that. Again, it's 20 years ago. And so I'm like, I know exactly where I want to work. I want to work north side right up against the Stockyards. And I did. I scored high enough in the academy. I got to pick. And so.
Oh, that's how they do it. You score high, you get to pick where you go.
Yeah.
Brats, a little spoiled.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah. The top five.
We have no incentive to perform here.
No, Dallas, you put your top three in, you'll get your bottom three. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. And so as a rookie cop, man, it was dope. Gangs, the people that victimize society, that's who I went after.
The quality of life.
Yeah.
The people that ruin the quality of life for others.
Yeah.
So what kind of gangs did they have out there?
Same ones.
Same ones? Okay.
Yeah. We got some little local, VNS, Barrio North Side.
Okay.
And some of the little, but those are just as bad, man, just on a local level as far as what they do, our murder rate and our crime rate in our city,
They bring down the property value.
Yeah.
Do you think it was beneficial to have experienced life before and to work in the contract business? And
yeah, definitely, because it gives you the perspective of, and I had, the marriage and a mortgage and all that, and so it helped me. A 21-year-old officer, to me, sometimes that's a scary thing, especially when they're the ones calling shots on a domestic.
Yeah, and they don't even have kids of their own or a wife or spouse of their own.
Yeah, and they don't know what child abuse is, or that the woman's not always the victim.
And then most of the people you're dealing with are older than you and have more life experience, but you're having to make decisions for them.
Or
act like you know what you're doing.
Writing somebody another traffic ticket that they've already got 5 warrants, and it's like, man, you're putting this person in a hole. Do they have a job? Do they have a driver's license? And they made a frivolous traffic violation, let it go, man, because just pulling that person over got their anxiety up there. They paid the consequences, So I think that level of maturity, knowing what more just about what life's about, man. What's a big deal? What isn't? You know?
No, that's really important because a
Well,
lot
then
of rookies
state
don't
police
have
state police would have no jobs.
that. Sorry, Paul. That's why Matt's here. You got to bring levity. Yeah. So once you got rolling out there,
Let me tell you about Fort Worth PD. Let me tell
come
you
on, Matt. Let's get it.
So, Fort Worth PD, when the first time we did a joint operation together, when he came and he brought his squad from Fort Worth into Dallas because we were chasing a dope dealer, and I had the takedown squad. He had the undercover aspect, but we had all the intel and everything was in our city, and we did this rodeo, and that's when I learned like Fort Worth PD is a solid 10 years behind Dallas PD as far as what the administrators would call evolution and what some of us would call like anti-policing policies, like the restricted policies that big police departments have. Because when it went like dope deals go, it went awry, people out on the ground scattered and all over the place, a car chase over on this one and the 2-foot chases all at the same time. And these Fort Worth officers, it was just, they had no recognition of order,
The
and
priority.
They're just pit bulls chasing a rabbit, and I'm trying to wrangle them all in. Like, man, this isn't safe. This is crazy. Why are we, And so, nothing happened like most of the time. But when we get back and everybody's corralled, everybody's arrested, and everybody's debriefing, and I'm like, I realized that Fort Worth they're still allowed to go be street cops, be real cops, And so I told him, I said, heads up, I think there's about a 10-year gap here, where there are no car chase policies, and we have no foot chase policies, and all these restricted anti-cop policies that are written by our own. And sure enough, they're still behind us, but that's one thing I really liked about Fort Worth. And we would sit there and believe it or not, if we're together fishing, hunting, whatever, campfire stories, we don't ever talk about work. Even some of the big stuff that happened, we rarely tell each other about it because it's work.
I think this is a good time to point out, Matt, that would be an excellent soundbite for a recruiting video for Fort Worth PD in these times of difficult recruitment. You might want to send that over.
Hey, I work for Dallas. Let me.
Yeah, he's getting people in their door. That's a good point though, Matt, because even our Eastern brothers and sisters with Garland PD,
they still catch bad guys.
Yeah, but see, all the cops love Garland PD.
Yeah.
Garland PD has the best reputation among police officers. You know,
No, they do,
and look who they hire. They'll look at Garland PD, the image they have in those uniforms.
Yeah, they're all jacked.
Yeah, they're in shape. That's a cop. That's who you want.
We talked about you starting off and you getting doing really cool Matt Bain shit out there in Fort Worth and chase, dope and gangbangers. And I want to get into a shooting with a motorcycle gang member. Can you just kind of walk the listener through that whole incident and let's tell the story?
Okay.
Try to do it to the level of Matt does. I want to see what you got.
He's the storyteller. So this guy was a 1%er, and I don't really remember which motorcycle gang he was in. So 1%er means that they've killed a rival, they've killed a police officer, they're an enforcer for their own motorcycle gang, which means if one of their own steps out of line, they check them, beat them up, whatever. Or if a rival gang does something, they go and make it right by violence. So he had his 1%er patch, and he was out of Georgia, and he did a long prison stint in Georgia. And he was out on parole, and like recidivist bad guys do, he raped a 12-year-old girl while out on parole. She made the outcry. He knew he was going back, so he was trying to get to Mexico. And so our fugitive unit, so back in Georgia, they pinch one of the guys, he flips, right, gives us intel. So our fugitive unit locates this dude. And Fort Worth Fugitive was trying to set up on it, and come up with a plan. And one of their undercovers was walking through the yard, and bad guy comes out of the backyard, and they're they're standing there as close as me to you, face to face. And it was unexpected. Both of them surprised each other. So bad guy runs back in, and so I was in SRT, so we were kind of a tactical team. And so fugitive calls us, hey, the cat's out of the bag. So we go running over there at code, and we set up on it as a barricaded person, waiting on intel. Is there anybody else in there? This kind of stuff, trying to figure it all out. I took a position in the back, and I had an AR-15. And there was a wood picket fence that surrounded the backyard, and I had removed one of the fence pickets, and I had my muzzle ported through. And so, the bottom beam, I mean, it was just the ideal sniper position.
So
really,
you were prone?
No, I was on
so the
seated.
middle. So the middle beam.
I was seated. No, maybe it was the middle beam, yeah.
Details matter. Come on.
Yeah. So I'm in a seated position with a supported rifle. I mean, and we're talking 30-yard shot, if probably more like 20 yards, and it's in a neighborhood. And so we're able to make contact with a guy, and he starts talking about he's got cocaine and meth, and he's going to take all the dope he has and then come out, and he's going to go out in a blaze of glory. And so all this is getting piped to us on the radio, and we're just waiting, and he does exactly what he said he was going to do. He which we hear that, how often we hear that, he's going to shoot it out, he's going to run, he's going to all this stuff.
Hear that all the time.
Yeah, but it is a lottery, man. That if you do these operations enough, that one of them's going to do what they say they're going to do. And this guy was 60, and that was the years old. And so that's what told me he's going to do it. Because those old salty dudes, man, And so so he comes out the back door, which is my area of responsibility. I remember he was wearing camouflage BDUs and a red T-shirt with the sleeves cut off, and he was huge. And when he came out of the back door, he had a big chrome-plated 357 up here like this, and I was at I was directly perpendicular to him, so I didn't see it until he brought it down and put it in his pocket. And I remember thinking, okay, that's his one freebie. Considering the totality of the circumstances, what he has, his criminal history, we knew that. What he had just done to this 12-year-old girl, we knew that he's trying to get to Mexico, and he said all the things he said, right? And so my mindset was I'm not playing at all. And I remember being almost disappointed that I didn't see the gun. Then he sees one of the other officers who was exposed. And so, perimeter, you got perimeter and then you got containment. Containment means if that person is in a house, can they get out of that house through a window, through the freaking chimney, through any way to escape and get out of police containment, out of your control. So that means you have to put, perimeter's different, right? But containment, you got to have it tight. And so unfortunately sometimes if you don't have armor or something that you can position somewhere, you got to sometimes be exposed, or somewhat exposed, which this officer was. And so bad guy sees him, they start dialogue, and I'm thinking to myself, he has no idea I'm here, and I got him covered, So that's one way of dealing with that issue is deadly cover, which is what I had, And he's going back and forth with Joe, my buddy, and actually Joe's one of my officers now on my team. Here we are, years later, and he pulls that pistol, and that was my, signal. And I remember that first round, I just touched it off, and it's like I'm looking at a picture in my mind. I can see that red T-shirt right here in his chest, just, that bullet hit, and he reacted to the shot. He brought the pistol right up in, like leveled off to have a gunfight, which then I reacted to that. And this is all my mind playing and all this in slow motion, And so I just started letting him have it with the AR. And He was on so much meth and cocaine. He was like a zombie, man. He just was taking it, and he just kept staggering around. And the gun ended up getting shot out of his hand. You know, I would like to take credit and say, yeah, I did that on purpose. You know, heck, I don't even know it was my bullet that did it because Joe was shooting too. You know, but that was one of the things we found out later, that we shot the gun out of his hand. And then he finally hits the ground. You know, and then that was it.
He put you in that position. After it was all over, and what year was that?
Oh, let's see. That's probably 09-ish. Yeah.
How did the department treat you after that went down?
Man, dude, they were great. We have a major case unit, which is, what do y'all call it, Matt? Here's
SIU.
SIU, yeah. And the crazy thing, so my wife at the time was pregnant in the hospital with a very, very risky, like my daughter is a complete miracle. She should not be here. And so my wife was on her back with her feet elevated. And they told her, if you get horizontal or upright, the baby dies. It comes out, falls out, it's over. And so, and the doctor told me, he said, you know, she can go home and be in this upside down position, but it's much safer for her to stay at the hospital. And he goes, I'll tell you, the one thing that kills these babies, that runs this situation, is stress. And I was like, 10-4, you got it. I know my assignment, you know. So then the shooting happens. So the major case, FWPD major case comes out, J.D. Moore, and he learns kind of that situation, and he says, hey, man, this crime scene's not going anywhere. So I drove from Fort Worth to Grapevine Hospital, Baylor Grapevine, and walked in my uniform, and, you know, I just, from the scene, you know, to my wife's bed, and I'm just playing it cool. Hey, how's it going? You know, and because, you know, Facebook and social media, it's just a matter of time before she sees that. And so I just want it. And so, you know, I just, hey, I was kind of in the area. She's like, in the area, Grapevine, what? You know? And I said, well, all right, I'm getting back to work, but hey, I'm fine. Just want you to let you know. So I got to do it like that, you know? So there was no stress for her at all.
No companion officer go with you? Or did you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
that's
good.
One. Yeah. Okay.
So it was, that just shows you how they took care of me like that, you know?
Well, they should. Everything's a case-by-case deal. You had those circumstances going on, and that is outside of the norm of how that's usually handled.
Right,
but that was really solid of them doing that for you.
Yeah, for sure.
What is your child's name?
Katie.
Okay. Shout out, Katie. How did you process that?
I remember I had kind of like a 3-day adrenaline dump. You know, it was all I could think about, man. I remember the very next day I was on that administrative leave thing. I tell you, man, I don't know if that's necessarily the best thing. It's a case-by-case basis, you know, because the kind of work that I was doing on that team, we were running so hot, man, that we got in a lot of shootings. A lot. And so car chases, use of force, critical police incidents, I mean, and then all of a sudden you're by yourself at your house and your whole team's still out there. It was weird, man. It was quiet and eerie and uncomfortable. And so I remember I went and picked up a Lazy Boy recliner the next day after the shooting. And I remember thinking, I was on the loading dock talking to these dudes in the warehouse and thinking to myself, man, they have and these were the first civilians I interacted with after the shooting. And I remember thinking to myself, man, they have no idea the guy they're talking to just killed somebody. You know, so that was a weird way to think about yourself, you know.
Scott, one of the things that I think a listener right now might be considering is the fact that you're in an officer-involved shooting, which the circumstances sound very legit, doesn't take much to figure that out. Mm-hmm. But that's a critical incident, and that's a lot of work stress. And at that time, you were really working hard and really involved in a real proactive unit. At the same time, now you're out for undetermined amount of time while the investigation conducts itself. You have this whole pregnancy issue with your child unborn yet and your pregnant wife. How do you think you are so resilient? Because we hear a lot about the importance of officer resiliency. Mm-hmm. What do you think you owe your resiliency to? Because the fact that you had those two things going on and you're here at the other end just fine, I think that would be something we should go over. Okay,
yeah. So I think it's being mentally prepared before it happens. I was actually in major case that what do y'all call it, SIU? I was in major case after I'd been in like 5 CPIs. And I would go to the academy and talk to the academy classes about resiliency and what is resiliency and how are you resilient, and it used to be warrior mindset. I haven't been invited to the academy to speak in a lot of years because I think my PowerPoint doesn't fit the, it's guardians or whatever we're calling them now. But what I couldn't stand hearing was, I just never thought it would happen. And I feel like grabbing them by their throat and you're going to tell me that you're going to strap a gun onto your hip and you're going to go work in the 12th largest city in this country and chase bad guys, and you're going to be surprised when you get in a shooting. Like, that's weak. That's mental weakness that you didn't prepare yourself for that, or your family for that.
So what you're saying is you don't learn anything better than when you have to teach it, and the fact that you were an instructor at the academy kept this fresh in your mind, so that was a tool that helped you through it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, that is important, having I would say you have to have both mindsets. You have to have a warrior mindset because at the drop of a hat, this could happen.
Right.
And it didn't even. This was even a slower developing shooting.
Right. This one was scripted, man.
Right.
I mean, it was like deer hunting.
Yes. So I mean, really, but imagine the other side. But also, you have to be a guardian at some point. You should be. It's okay to be both, but don't shit on the warrior mindset. You can never take that out of this profession. Right. You have to have it.
Well, if you do, you have Uvalde, but maybe that's
absolutely.
We'll get to that later.
So I think that these are all lies, and the only reason he was resilient is because he was trying to emulate me.
I could see that.
Just shared DNA.
Yeah.
I was born first.
He was trying to act tough because it didn't faze me, all my stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I got in a shooting before he did.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, okay. So that he had to make
Did you
up
really?
for it.
I couldn't remember if that was the way it played
Oh,
out.
well, shit. Hey,
I think
big timing
I
already.
think I
here
had
on
two under my belt before you go.
They mentioned that they don't talk about work, and you can see Matt's learning as we go here. Like, literally.
Yeah, he's getting more out of this episode than the other listeners.
That's interesting.
So whenever you go to the hospital, but how quick did you call your brother?
Oh, man.
On the way to the hospital?
Yeah, immediately. Yeah.
That was the only time we ever have done the 911 on text was after officer-involved shooting. It's the only time he's ever sent me a 911 text and vice versa.
I've been on scene on his, the first one where he got kidnapped and all that, had blast his way out of there. I was there. I came to that scene. Gosh, can we talk about where I was on the July deal?
Oh, no. He was also on scene for July 7th.
He came down. Okay.
I might have been closer than anybody knew about. Yeah. But, man, on that's a story, too, man. That's a...
the 7-7.
Yeah, my perspective
your
on
perspectives on it?
Yeah,
okay.
on his shooting. Yeah. You want to do that now, or
we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah,
we'll touch back on it. I want to get into. We just went through this. I want to get into the other shooting.
Okay.
And when you unmarked Tahoe.
Okay. So, me and my crew, the SRT boys, we were a bounty hunter had called us and told us that he knew where a guy was wanted for attempted murder, something like this. I don't know. And so we get in an unmarked Tahoe, 4 of us. And we go to this little Latino bar in the stockyards, and we're doing the covert contact thing, the jump out thing, which is one of the most effective police tactics there is, but it's frowned upon these days. And we jump out on this dude, take him down, take him in custody. And we get a marked unit to come, scoop him up, take him to jail. We are in our little Tahoe in the stockyards, going back to the sector to go what's next in our day. When a priority 1 shooting goes out a mile from us. It's a shooting at a party in Northside. And so I'm like, guys, let's go see if it just happened. And let's go see if we can, as we're en route, see, a clue, and it's exactly what happened. So we start driving, and you know how it is. You're in the unmarked, but all the marked units are flying past you, code 3, and they don't even realize you're there, And sure enough, we pick out this vehicle that's juking all these marked units that are responding code, And so we're able to kind of follow him without him realizing it because we're not in a black and white with sirens and lights, And and he is hauling ass. And it was February, and it was barely raining. And he was driving in a way that I don't think our Tahoe could have done that without losing control. So we lose sight of him in a neighborhood. So we come around a kind of a blind corner, and he's at the end of a kind of a dead end. I got to paint the scene a little bit. So to his front of his car, there is a tree line and a cliff, and on the passenger side of his vehicle, there's the same thing, a tree line and a cliff. And down in the bottom of that cliff is one of the railroads that comes in and out of the stockyards. So he's on the curb line, 10 feet from his car is it's woods that eventually dives off into a cliff, okay? And as we come around the corner, so we're at a perpendicular with him, with the front of his vehicle coming here, and he's facing this way, right? And so, and he's out of his vehicle, standing in his headlights, and it's dark. And so we roll up on him, and again, we're in an unmarked, so he's not that suspicious of us. And then we're like, already go, and we jump out. And so I was in the right rear passenger side where I was seated. And so I don't know what you guys call it. We call it the arc of fire to keep from a crossfire situation from happening. So to paint the picture for the listeners, we're in a line, but we're in a line. If you're the bad guy looking at us, we're in a line right to left, not straight on. Am I saying it right?
Yeah, it sounds like Tombstone, the OK Corral.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Exactly. And so that keeps us from being a crossfire. And so I'm right flank. I'm on the right side. So I start swinging wide to get an angle because we've got like three, a heavy head, and then I'm going to come over here. Yeah, and to triangulate him. And this is, from being in major case and doing all these, studying all these shootings and everything, this is perception, and this is what you can see what it looks like on body camera, but that doesn't mean crap, man. For what? It could be just as simple as, the body camera is facing this way, but the officer's head is facing, to the right whatever transpires, right? So there's a street light. I mean, I don't know what it was that I missed it. What I missed was the passenger door was open, and he runs to the passenger side. So I'm thinking, dude, we're about to be chasing an armed guy through the woods, and I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to put myself in an advantage and lose sight of him. So I immediately bolted to my right, like at a 45, to cut him off. Well, he jumped in the driver's seat through the open passenger side door. I didn't catch that. Everybody else did, because I'm sure they're wondering what the hell I was doing running behind this vehicle. And I remember I'm scanning the woods, looking for him, and the vehicle comes flying at me, and it's in reverse, and it's backing, and the tires were spinning, and that's when I had that, damn, this is how it goes for me. This is because I knew immediately that my buddies need to be shooting right now. But if you think of the way that played out, look where I am at, right? Here's my buddies. Here he is. Here's me. So, and then they're going to shoot him. They're shooting right at me. So, and all this stuff, man, can actually go through your mind, as fast as all this is playing out. I was telling myself, guys, just shoot. Don't. If I get killed right now, it be because they tried to stop him, then that son of a bitch running me over, if I had to choose, and then I start shooting, and everybody's shooting. So it is just a horrible, this is going to be one of these videos, if we could see it, that everybody's going to quarterback and go, this officer's an idiot. What were they? There are all these things wrong with it,
Those are the people that they don't have to make split-second decisions in a high-pressure situation.
And they weren't in my brain knowing that, he didn't know the dude jumped in the car, because I remember being shot. I remember thinking, oh, my God, there's another person involved here. Where did this other person come from, So anyway, I remember the shot that, contrary to that first one, how we talked about was kind of scripted, and I would liken it to deer hunting, to where you're posted up, you're cozy, you're secure, you see it coming, it's coming, you're waiting, all that. This one was the, oh shit, and for all I know, man, I might have been stepping and fetching and, shooting this way, but I do remember the one round that, boom, and I was like, I got him. I knew it, and it did hit him right between right here, right in the chest. So his car was already, hauling ass, and it was wet. And so it finishes doing this donut, and slams into a big brick mailbox, and that door is still open. His body goes flying out into the street, and then, I heard the audio later, during the investigation and everything. And in my mind at the time, I'm pretty calm and collected, but the audio, I key up and I go, I'm going to back off of this. And I'm like, breathe, calm down, everybody breathe, calm down. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, golly, whoever's screaming on the radio needs to breathe and calm down, needs to do exactly what they're telling everybody else to do, man.
That's going to be the title of this episode, Breathe, Calm Down.
Yeah.
On the first shooting, perfectly scripted, like out of a movie. This here had a lot of other moving parts and a lot of wiggle room for people to armchair quarterback you.
Sure.
How did the department react after this one?
Well, and then, so there's a GO. I got a GO, Nate. I think my buddy Bruce Anderson, he and I can arm wrestle over who owns this general order. In Fort Worth, we say, I got a GO. That means you did something dumb, and they put it, Bruce, it was a narcotics deal, buy bust that went bad, and it is roughly the same scenario. The guy was going to run over an officer, and he handled business. And so the administration definitely didn't like it, And I think the thing that saved me on mine from them coming hard at me was the fact that, man, I had a mistake of fact. I had a misconception, and who's to say that anybody else there or them, if they had taken that far right flank to cut that angle, that their vision wouldn't have been obscured, because he ducked down because he's at gunpoint, so he runs around the car, ducks down, disappears, and Superman's into the driver's seat, So I'm in a defendable position to where, look, I didn't have that angle, that line of sight that let me know that he had occupied that driver's seat, So, and funny thing is, I didn't know they were looking so hard at it, the administration, as far as coming after me, until years later when I was in major case. And one of the first things you do in major case, the sergeant says, hey, go pull some shooting files and research them. And what do you think I do? I go pull mine.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. Because I didn't have all that perspective of the investigation until then. And I remember I went up to Sergeant John Phillips. I said, hey, Big John, was I under the microscope? He goes, oh, yeah, bud, you have no idea. I said, dang. Wow.
Well, there's a lot of people who probably ended up under a microscope. They go a whole career and never know.
Yeah.
But, for administrators, they're always, and especially, what year was that?
Man, I guess 09-ish.
09. So you had these pretty close on top of each other.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You just walked us through that second shooting, and you touched on 7-7. I want you to kind of tell the listener about, we've heard Matt's perspective and what he did on that day here in Dallas, and then we've had some other people touch on it from their involvement, but I want to hear what your story is on that from your point of view.
Okay, so if you're a police officer and something like that is going down, it's an active, drawn-out situation, you have probably feelings and things inside you that civilians don't. It's a cop thing. But then you add the fact that it's your identical twin brother that's involved, So on that day, I was in the backyard with a Milwaukee screw gun in my hand building a barn. And I holstered that screw gun on my work belt, and I pulled out my phone, and I pulled up Matt's contact. And I sat there staring at my phone like, why do I have, what's this, and I just remember thinking, why am I doing that? Put my phone back up, kept working on the barn. And then it was weird. It happened 3 times. And on the 3rd time, that's when I realized that I've done this a few times. I have this desire to call Matt. And then as I'm sitting there with the phone still in my hand, you know, my wife comes out of the back out there and says, hey, you need to come inside. Something bad's going on in Dallas. And I dropped all my crap, and I come into the living room, and there it is, you know, the live media coverage, and I watched the DART officer go down. I don't know if I necessarily watched it live or if it was a refeed. And I was in major case as a detective at the time. And so I had this maroon-colored Chevy Impala, and I'm in jeans. I'm sweating. It was July, you know, and it was the evening, so you can imagine it's 90, 100 degrees outside. And so I go, and the first shirt I find that's PD is a coyote tan, zero tolerance 4PD ZT shirt, and I throw that shirt on, grab my badge and gun. I'm hauling ass east. Now I had no misconceptions that I'm going to come swinging in on Tarzan Vine and solve the problem. You know, that's not what my plan was. But I can't sit there in my living room in Keller when he's dug in. And he had an opportunity to slip me out a text, some stuff I'm probably not supposed to say, but so I knew he was in it, like as deep as anybody was. And so by the time I make it down to downtown, man, it was the eeriest thing. Y'all remember? It was a ghost town. And it was starting to get dark by the time I got there, and there was no people anywhere. The city had been vacated, and of course I just hit my little red and blues and hold the badge out the window, and all the Dallas perimeter security and all that. I just, you know, like I went like I knew I was supposed to be there, you know. And I know there's probably so many people said, "Who is that guy?" You know, but feds were starting to kind of show up and stuff like that. And Matt, just hijack this at any time if I start. So
I was wondering if on the Tarzan Vine though, if like you were going to wear that coyote tan shirt, or was this going to be like a whole shirtless thing?
Loincloth, swinging in the downtown Dallas.
Well, I wanted to give Dallas an opportunity to solve the problem, you know, instead of me just coming in single-handedly and just bagging it up, you know.
Walking over and slapping the guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Behave.
Knock it off.
So I end up, he and I are able to sometimes kind of communicate through text. I keep looking at you to, you know, give me the...
You're fine.
Yeah, you can
You're fine.
say whatever you want.
All right, and so I'm parked on the curb, dude, right outside the incident as it's still going on, you know. And I guess if I say something, y'all can edit it out, right? Okay. So I get a text from Matt that says, well, just stand by because there's about to be a kaboomy. I think that's what he said. I wish I would have saved these texts, man, you know. And I'm like, what? Y'all are going to blow them up? He goes, yep. And then I was sitting there, and then I hear 5 minutes later, there's it wasn't like a bang, you know. It was this low boom that just kind of rolled. And I thought, damn, did y'all blow him up or the building up, you know?
Yes.
And so he's like, all right, come meet me at the door. So he comes down right then and there. We walk. I mean, the smoke was still in the air. It was still, and I walked all the way right up there, and I stood over that dude, you know. And, you know, we're identical twins, so we're the same size, you know. I said, well, dude, I got to understand, you know, because being in shootings myself, being in major case, I look at shooting so different. Even when I go deer hunting and I have an animal that I've taken, I do ballistics on the body. You know, where is my projectile? How did the projectile perform? Do I need a heavier grain, a lower grain? You know, all these things. And so there was muzzle burn on the corner, on the wall, where he had a C-clamp hold with his AR, and so that's going to line up with me exactly because we're this. Like I said, I think he's a quarter inch taller than me, but you know, so we're the same size. And I'm sitting here looking at the rounds that had come through that corner on that wall, and it hit the wall behind him, and the pile of sheetrock on the ground where his feet were.
Well, there were several of us. It wasn't just me there.
Well, yeah, but. And I'm like, how did you survive this? You know, I was like, when these rounds, because I positioned myself to shoot where bad guy was, And I'm like, you would have eaten these rounds. He goes, man, I don't know. Maybe on when those came through, maybe I was pied out. Maybe I was pulled in, and so that was freaking, for me, not that it's all about me, but this is just my perspective. I'm really glad, very glad I got to go do that walkthrough, and see Dead Guy, just to be able to, give him one of these,
Finality. How that your twin, you knew how close it all was for everybody.
Yeah.
But how did that make you feel?
Very, very proud, man. And so Matt and I were in this celebratory, having been involved in them myself, it's, and being a cop, I think I could have almost been on the same high he was, that there was victory, but there was.
It was at a cost.
Yeah. So, I'm not trying to say this in the wrong way. He and I got on the elevator, Matt and I did, and we were just the two of us, and we rode up to SIU floor, whatever level that is, and that's when we were that was the first time it was just he and I by ourselves. We were kind of in this a celebratory type mood, and then those doors open, and the hallway in SIU right outside those elevators is lined with Dallas patrol officers. And I remember there was this one blonde female officer, probably nearing her retirement just because of her age. And she was sitting there in a chair with her, elbows on her knees, kind of head down, and she had a ponytail, and her ponytail was shaking. And it was like the biggest slap, reality. My God, what these officers just, went through. And
yeah, I remember that exact same, because there was a line of chairs on each side of the wall. Everybody was facing each other, and you could have heard a pin drop.
Yeah.
And
About outside of SIU and homicide.
Everybody they're waiting to give their statements and be photographed and do the whole PES.
So if they were on the floor, they were involved at some level where they're probably barking rounds, and it was, it was real quick, like the elevator opens and
there it
and
is.
Your environment totally, we're in there having a party, and then elevator opens and it's like, oh dang, wow. And then so when we're in there, SIU starts doing their thing, and they're asking Matt for his gun and stuff, and he is not wanting. I mean, he is still fully, kidded. And he wasn't wanting to give it up, and one of the SWAT guys was like, dude, and Matt was a little smart or rough with, a detective, because when you get your kill switch, it's a heavy switch, and when it gets flipped, it's not, you don't just,
you can't turn it right back off.
Yeah, it might take you a minute, to totally come back down to baseline 0, and so that's when Matt had gotten called off, and these SWAT guys didn't know I was there, and I heard them go, man, did you see what Baines did? And I'm like, if one of these motherfuckers says something smart, I'm going to beat their ass right here in the SIU, And so I just stayed quiet and listened, and that's when one of them talked about how he held the corner for cover while the rest of them, and I was just like, oh my gosh, So the first time I heard it was from them,
How'd that make you feel?
Proud.
Fearful?
Yeah. It made me glad that I came out there to see all of this, because it was such a big deal. And man, if I hadn't seen it, if I hadn't been there, it's probably redundant, but having an identical twin, man, you just need to be close, you need to be on that, understand that, and without being there, I couldn't have conceived it.
And think about how many things could have happened through life where you wouldn't have been there. Right? Like if you had still been in construction, or if Matt had made the Coast Guard a career, there's so many things that had to happen in your life to make that instant happen.
Right, for me to be there, And a funny thing is, they because I was on the floor, you guys remember they had to call in CID. Do y'all call it CID? Just
capers.
General assignment detectives.
Everybody was calling in. Yeah.
Because there were so many interviews that had to be done, and this guy was in over his head, man. This poor detective, and I was like, I wasn't involved at any level. Okay, sorry, I just need you to, and he wasn't hearing it. So my statement, DPD has Scott Baines' statement, and it says, I am SWAT Officer Matt Baines' twin brother. I just came for moral support. I did not witness anything. Thank you.
Because he wasn't going to let you leave until you read a statement.
I know at some point when they're putting this investigation together, somebody reads that and go, what the?
Well, what was he doing?
What is this?
So Matt talked about this offline, and I want to bring it on this episode. We've already heard you walk us through some shootings, and then you're talking about your brother's shooting on 7/7 and that horrific date and incident. The resiliency, I think the listeners are that's gonna jump out at them. I mean, both of y'all, where do y'all? I mean, that twin power is gotta come into play. As far as how do you feel that the way you grew up, y'all's connection? Do y'all think that helped build resiliency?
Well, I think it started a lot in childhood. Before I was ever an officer, man, we were getting into stuff because we just because of how we grew up. I got hit in the head with a brick. I've been stabbed, and this is all prior to policing. And we used to We used to wrestle competitively, water ski competitively. I mean, so before we even got into college, we had, been in combat, so to speak. I mean,
7 of our lives. Man.
Yeah, and tasted our own blood and all that kind of stuff. And we weren't doing it to harden ourselves or anything other than just growing up in a house of 4 boys. It
was just life. It's just the way.
Yeah, that's just life. And running into some just rough patches growing up, and like that time I got hit with a brick, and right in the side of the head. I wasn't sure I was gonna live through that. And then he had his own experience because he was there when that happened as a witness, and just both of us got through that. I think I was was a kid. I was like 6th, 7th grade,
Mm-hmm.
And then, but the good times, like we lived in Oklahoma for a little while on this lake, and we had a lake crew that we would compete in water skiing, kneeboarding, all our water sports, and we had a whole lot of fun. And we had this old metal swing set in the backyard off to the side of the house, and we had one of those 3-man slingshots.
It's called a winger.
I don't know if y'all have ever seen one of those, but it takes 3 people and they're really made for launching water balloons, and you can sail a water balloon probably a couple 100 yards with one of these. And so whenever our buddies were out there practicing for a ski tournament or kneeboarding or whatever, we would run out and catch a bunch of bluegill, a bunch of perch off the back dock, and we would launch these fish at them while they're out there making their water ski runs. And I don't know if they ever figured. I thought they just probably thought that the fish were just jumping up out of the water, but
the flying fish that showed up in Oklahoma.
And we're trying to tag these dudes from way over on the side of the house at like 200 yards. And so just it wasn't, and then you get involved in this real grown up stuff and these police involved shootings, and we never showed like a lot of weakness about ourselves to each other, and that wasn't a concentrated, like a decision that we made. I can't be weak. It just was always there.
It just was.
It was always there. Yeah, and the stunts we used to pull off. A lot of people would look at it as, oh man, y'all were just really competitive, and I never felt that way. I felt that it was fun. We're just. But our stunts were pretty high level when it comes to, especially these days, the way just your normal kids.
We'd be in federal prison.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
We made things go boom, and all kind of stuff that I wouldn't even think about allowing any of my kids to do. Even though we still take them out and we go hard with our kids, and they've had their bumps and scrapes, and one of them got almost caught on fire, Hunter, one time, and they've got pretty good scars on them, but it wasn't really at the level that we went back in the 80s.
It seems like both of y'all have a higher threshold for stress and for dealing with it, and I know you, Matt, and Scott, you don't sound much different. I mean, y'all really, it sounds like I've sat down with Matt several times on this show and just offline. It's almost like I'm talking to the same person, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And it's really unique, the identical twin, and just have the connection, and just it literally. I've never been around, even sitting with Brian and Gabe Candelaria. They're a lot different, but I'm not getting that from y'all. It's really, I think it's really unique.
Yeah. I was in a crisis intervention team also. I was a sergeant supervisor in CIT.
Well, there's the difference, yeah.
And so
They won't allow me to supervise anybody with any sort of real job to do.
Yeah.
And one of the things I learned about, officer resiliency and mental health and that kind of stuff, it was scary to me because there would be an officer that, as far as anybody knows, is totally normal, and all of a sudden in a very, very short amount of time, everything goes wrong, bad with them. So it made me be less naive, because people have asked me this a lot, man, between you and your brother, my gosh, y'all been through so much, and how do you deal with it? Are there any issues? So far, my brain just locks it away. There's stories that are unbelievable that I've experienced, I've lived through, and I've actually totally forgotten about them. I mean, I've had shell casings bouncing off my front window. That's how close, the gunfire is. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Like a normal person, that would be the most memorable thing in their life, Yeah. And so my brain, I don't know why my brain does it, but it just locks it up. I had a little, she was 5 years old, and she died in my arms. And she had sustained a lot of trauma, physical trauma. And I can't remember. I mean, to me, in my mind, she was a pristine, perfect little angel. Lupita was her name. And I hope that those memories stay out of my brain forever, if one day the Pandora's box does open.
You might be calling me in this unit.
Yeah.
I mean, that is something that every man and woman wearing the badge that deals with this type of trauma, or any trauma, just the day-to-day rigmarole of ups and downs of the being hypervigilant for a full shift, going home, going down, coming back up the next day, and so on. We have to compartmentalize and detach to a level. But you guys, it sounds like you're lucky. But I got to say, though, it's the first time I've met you face-to-face, that we were on a break. I was talking about your brother's incident on 7/7, and from Kennetti's perspective of what he saw in that stairwell, I saw you had a look, and it was more concerned with. I could tell you generally, it brought you back to that place, and I said fearful, not fearful that the incident. He could handle up, but you came that close to losing him.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and man, I don't know where I would go if that happened. I think there'd be a missing person report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to get into Forest Hill, this incident, this hostage rescue on Forest Hill.
Yeah, man. Okay, so, boy, this little girl. So, her and her mother were walking on the sidewalk. And
this was all over the news. This was the one that made...
Pretty high
the ring doorbell captured just your worst nightmare. Mom and a little girl walking down the street in the middle of a neighborhood, and some car pulls up. Dude jumps out and rips the little girl away from the mom.
Yeah, the mom fought for all she was able to, but this dude was big.
It's every parent's nightmare.
Yeah,
have that.
Yeah, this guy was big and strong. So he pretty much just handled mom, flicked her off, grabbed the little girl, and took off. And so it was all hands on deck, man. Fort Worth PD put it all into it. We had troopers, and so I ended up being, because I've had this, you have weird knacks for things. Like I was decent in crisis intervention, and I thought, there's no way that's not my thing, And then also CACU, Crimes Against Children Unit. Man, I had a knack for getting confessions from pedophiles. Who knew? And everybody said, "Man, you don't go to CACU. You'll choke these guys over the table." But you don't know it until you try it, what you're good or not good at. So I had this knack of rescuing endangered children. It just had happened by happenstance that at the operator level, the supervisor level, the command post level, whatever, that I had been able to I'm saying that that sounds very arrogant, but these things had worked out for me, right? So when this little girl gets kidnapped, I was a sergeant over SRT, and SRT, man, it was a utility team. We would do tactical stuff, narcotic stuff. We were the enforcement arm for everybody. So this little girl gets gets kidnapped under those circumstances, and we have a rough vehicle description off one of those real hazy door cams, and it's all hands on deck. And everybody's looking for it, and I'm running the command post, and my team's out looking, and so I had the 6 SRT teams. One of them I had, y'all go to all the RSO, registered sex offenders, and just you go up in their house. You don't ask permission, and I had an inner search area, outer search area, RSO. So I'm trying to organize all this stuff. And I remember I was in a command post vehicle that had whiteboard stuff all over it. And the writing as the day had gone on was, you could stand there and do a 360, and there was script everywhere. And so there was a hotel very close to Fort Worth and Forest Hill. It was actually in Forest Hill where the hotel actually was. And somebody had called in and said, "Hey, there's a vehicle matching the description." We put it out on Facebook and social media. Vehicle matching the description parked at this hotel. So some officers from another agency went and checked it out, actually went in the room where the girl was, and the bad guy bullied him. He was big, loud, scary, pushy. "You're violating my rights," all that. Took that line with him, And all the while, the little girl was shoved into one of those big totes, plastic tote, off in the corner. So they left. I didn't know anything about that in the command post. So then we had a preacher and his buddy from a local church that were out running around looking for this girl, and they had driven to their last apartment complex, and they said, "All right, let's go home." And so they were out on the highway, and they're like, "Hey, we're starving." So they ran through a Whataburger, got drive-through, and it routed them onto a service road because they wanted to go to the Whataburger. As they're getting back on the highway to go home, they're like, "Hey, there's a hotel. It's so easy and convenient just to drive to the parking lot. We don't even have to go out of our way." And they pull in there, and they're like, "Hey, look at this vehicle." And they were hooked up with us, with Fort Worth PD, these volunteers. And so they call dispatch. Dispatch notifies me, "Hey, you got some of your civilian volunteers out there. They found a vehicle that matches description. Oh, hey, be advised, this has already been checked out." I'm like, "No." So I send my team, my SRT team. They get there, they look in the vehicle, and I remember Jason Young, he's Baines, "This is the vehicle." I say, "Why?" He goes, "Dude, there's blood and a kid's earring in the front passenger seat." I said, "Fucking go," And so there was patrol officers that was there dealing with the management, and they figured out the car, belongs to the room, whatever, And dispatch is like, "Hey," because she's hearing all the radio traffic, me telling my guys, go. And so there was half of them still running code 3, trying to get there. And so they figure out what room it is, and so the dispatch is kind of hearing the radio. They can tell what I'm gearing up for, which is a hard hit, and they're like, "Hey, you're clear. That room's already been searched. It's already been determined by police that it's." And I'm like, "I'm clear," and so, man, on the radio when my team got set, I said, "Breach, breach, breach," and boom, they slamming in the door. As they were slamming the door, dude answers, and has no clothes on. They grab him, throw him down in the hallway, go in, and the little girl's shoved back in that bin, and so they look in that little hamper, that little bin, and find her, scoop her up. She's been, bad things have happened, poor thing, and I got a lot of questions from not scrutiny, but just like a lot of tactical guys, SWAT, calling me. How did you, because SWAT is so whiteboard, they're so planned, they're so warrant, they're so processed, which they need to be. They have to be. That is their. I'm not saying that in a negative way. We got to have that. If they weren't that way, they would be wrong. But on the flip side, especially when they've been there that long, they sometimes lose track of how street work needs to happen.
Well, the exigency that you have to,
right.
You got to act on it.
Yeah. And, I was getting a lot of questions about how are you going into all these people's houses without their consent? And when you have an endangered, missing child that's been abducted under those circumstances, a stranger abduction, there's a lot more leeway that police have than even chiefs and administrators on big departments realize that we have. And it's in the CCP. Don't make me quote it because I have to dig around for it. But you go and you ask for forgiveness later.
You feel you saved that little girl's life and your team by making that decision?
Absolutely, because he had a knife this big. Like, I just held my hand up like 12 inches. And that's what he was planning on doing with her. He was trying to figure out, had pretty much finished with her, and so he was trying to figure out how he was what his next move was when we rescued her.
You feel you made the right decision?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Wouldn't take it back?
No.
Save that little girl.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't get scrutiny, but how'd that make you feel getting kind of the second guess?
It made me feel like we needed a lot more class teaching on that. Those stranger abductions don't happen very often, and so I started the CART team, Child Abduction Response Team, and then we have a sex offender register, something, I don't know. So
like a SOAP team, Matt, is that what that's like?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so I helped one of our assistant chief, Julie Swearingen, build all that. Like, she was asking me, okay, what do we need for this? I was like, well, here's like a personnel, what you'll need, some resources you'll need, here's how a lot of this. So I kind of helped her. She was the brass, and I was the doer. And so there is now protocol for Fort Worth PD on how to respond to abducted, endangered children.
And it spurred from that incident.
Yeah, I think it was because there's always in a city the size of ours a few of those that come along. So I think it was one of those that the momentum, it just needed one more thing to happen. So
it's a rarity to have a true stranger on stranger child abduction. A lot of the
it's caught on camera, especially.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's caught on camera. But a lot of the Amber Alerts you see come up, or a lot of the missing persons, or a lot of family issues that come up.
It's a custody issue, but there's some twist to it that makes it Amber Alertable. You know?
Right.
Yeah,
falls in that category.
Right.
So your wife now, what is her name?
Karen.
Okay. I read something in your bio that really just jumped out at me, and I got to meet Karen. So she's a 6-time world champion at Brazilian Jiu Jitsu.
Yes. Yep.
Tell us about that. You better talk about it because, hey, listen, I do enough of these. If you don't mention folks, you're going to hear about it, I promise.
Right. She's going to kick your ass, probably.
Yeah. She's going to come kick my ass for not telling you to talk about it.
I'm very docile and well-behaved at the house now to keep from getting dismembered or choked out,
Why don't you tell them how y'all met, though?
Yeah,
Because you did get beat up.
Yeah.
Was it a Mississippi bar brawl that I'm hearing about?
I wish. It was worse because there was witnesses. So I went down to our academy, did the regular defensive tactics thing, qualified, the annual qualify, and I sent a smart aleck email. I wrote a what's the thing? The assessment, the
Critique evaluation?
yeah, whatever. Yeah, the eval. And I was just being like Matt and our smart aleck, to our lead DT guy, he's a black belt. Tig is his name. So he sends me an email. Hey, I liked your critique, and hey, I'm putting on a ground fighting seminar. I'm inviting a few people. You're a wrestler, so come tell me what you think. I want your feedback. So all right. So I show up, and there's probably 30 other that he had chosen throughout the department to come be the guinea pigs, and he had Karen that he was going to use as a demonstrator to show the effectiveness of these techniques. And why Karen? Well, because she's a 125-pound female, so should be able to just kick her ass, right? And so they asked for volunteers, and I'm like, there's no way it's a lose-lose. If I go out and just beat this little girl up, I'm that guy. If I go out and get beat up, I'm that guy.
You're that guy.
Yeah. And so, but they had this whole plan, Tig did. And so one of the assistants shoved me out there, and like, you got to visualize this. We're in a circle, right? Everybody's in a circle, and she's standing in the middle. I get pushed out there, right? And so Tig's like, oh, great, Scott. Thanks for volunteering. All right, just take her down like you're going to arrest her. And I'm like, oh, okay, I don't really even know how to start this. So I just do the wrestler tie-up, boom, heavy hand on the neck, and and
she's like, oh, he's already in my guard. He's already in my trap.
Yeah. And then she responded, and clubbed the back of my neck, and that should have been a hint, And so I'm like, man. So I took her down. She probably let me, And I remember going from I'll go about 50% to being in survival mode real freaking quick, man. And she had me there was nothing I could do, man. Nothing, right in front of everybody, man. She just ended me. And I was so impressed. So impressed.
So in love.
Yeah.
Yeah, love it. First choke.
I think we should point out the only time you've ever used the word survival mode in this podcast wasn't during your shooting for the kidnapping, but when you met your wife and she started to beat you up in front of everybody.
Yeah, and she's done it a few times, man.
Yeah?
Yeah.
When did y'all get married?
Oh, it wasn't until a while after that, actually.
Many more ass kickings later.
Yeah.
You submitted.
At that time, she was divorced, but I was still married then. So although I was very impressed with her, I had this business that I had. I was putting security officers in schools and churches and arming them and licensing them.
Okay.
And so, and I needed a ground fighter. So she and I exchanged info, and that was it. Never followed up on anything for years until after I was divorced. And the craziest thing is, I was working out at a gym at LA Fitness, and I changed, and I go to leave, and a guy in the locker room says, "Hey man, you dropped this," and he hands me her business card, and I look at it, and I guess it was in my gym bag. I had no idea it was even there, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is the jiu-jitsu girl that whooped me years ago." And so, yeah, I called her.
I'm due for a spanking. I'm coming back.
Right.
So I want to talk about what you're doing now. You got a really unique team, and y'all made the news here recently in the DFW area. But I want to get into the Fentanyl Overdose Squad. Dallas PD has one, but I want to kind of talk about. We've never talked about it. Yeah. Can you kind of tell a listener what that unit is? And I want to get into, and the cases. Probably can't talk about, but talk about that unit and also what y'all do, how you investigate, and the epidemic of fentanyl we've seen.
Okay, so the dope game has totally changed, right? You remember it used to be that was your weed house, that's your meth house, that's your crack house, that's where you go to get coke. Well, now fentanyl's everywhere. They're putting it in everything. It doesn't even make sense. Meth is speed, right? Meth.
Why do we believe that's happening?
Because of the availability of it. And when you're talking about it's anywhere street wholesale, I've seen $1 a pill to $6 a pill. For something about opioids, if you're an addict, alcohol, meth, marijuana, an addict of any kind, you're also an opioid addict. It would seem. So the addiction to that stuff is rampant. Blame big pharma, whatever all the conspiracy stuff, whatever it is. But that's true. I mean, doctors were writing opioid scripts like they were candy. And so we have the perfect storm. We have a completely addicted society to opioids, and we have China, who they have our best interest in mind.
Yeah.
And the quality of fentanyl that China is making is, you should see the plants that it's coming. You could eat off the floor. I mean, it looks like where they were building rocket ships or something. It is amazing, and they're shipping that in bulk quantities to Mexico.
And add the open borders, and then there you go.
Right,
Yeah.
and then the
pipeline.
China knows where to get it to where it will go coming in the U.S., and that's Mexico, and then we have no border security, so it is on, and so the availability is there, it's everywhere, and so we're seeing it put in all dope. Cocaine, that's the Superman. You get your party drug, you feel great, everybody loves me, I look good, and they're putting fentanyl in that, which is a downer. I mean, fentanyl is a sedative. It makes you just drool, slobber, and fall unconscious. So I don't understand the market. Because if I am going to my dope dealer to get meth, and he sells it to me laced with fentanyl, man, I wanted to get meth so I could clean my garage for the next 3 days, And this dude just put me to sleep, So.
Yeah. So how does your unit? What is your unit? How do you investigate that?
Okay, so what has changed is everybody is dying. And just in Fort Worth, we're having 3 deaths per week on average, 3 dead bodies a week. And so somebody should do something about this, right? So what we do is we react at the level that law enforcement does. We can't prevent it. We just react to all this, what's happening, this epidemic. So Governor Greg Abbott, thankfully, has given us a law that went into effect September 1st, 2023, that if somebody dies of fentanyl, now you can. I call it the fentanyl murder law. So in Texas, we can go after these dope dealers for murder, and that's what we're doing. So our job is to, when we have a person die of fentanyl, then it's just like in the dope game, we start running informants, undercover stuff, cell phone dumps, all that, to figure out where this fentanyl came from. And of course, we want to swim upstream as far as we can, but so far with the fentanyl, just to get the murder case, you don't have to swim very often. I mean, just who brought him the pill?
Who's the dealer?
Yeah. Now these cases haven't played out in court yet, but they're about to. Tarrant County's about to have their first one. And my team had the first real fentanyl murder case in the state. But Arlington PD's got one that's going to actually go to trial first. So we'll see how this goes.
You can probably learn a lot from that, though, actually.
Oh,
just
yeah.
The way the tactics used the defense is going to use. And this epidemic reminds me, like of the early, I think it was the late 90s or early 2000s, when they had some teenagers dying up in Plano from heroin overdose. Remember that?
Yeah.
And then that kind of kicked off going after the actual dealers.
Right.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And this is like something similar with the new epidemic of fentanyl, which is way more deadly, right?
Yeah. So what the listeners need to know, especially if you're non-law enforcement, 2 milligrams. I can't think of a way to describe. Think of the old number 2 pencil, right? And you sharpen it all the way down to a sharp point, and you have a pile of baby powder, and you just scoop up a little fentanyl or a little baby powder on the end of that pencil. Thump that pencil, most of it falls off, and those little specks you have left on that pencil, that's 2 milligrams. So when you think of a pill, the size of one of the little round, Tylenols or something, the amount of fentanyl that's in there that can kill you, those little specks of powder. And it's being manufactured by the cartel. And so 6 out of 10 pills, the DEA latest number, 6 out of 10 are fatal. And so, it's not the meth monkey on his back in your driveway cutting off your catalytic converter at 3 o'clock in the morning that's dying, because those dudes have ridiculous tolerances. It's your kids. And in America, we are a pill popping society. So when you think about dope and drugs, it's easy to be turned off by the heroin with the used bent up syringe and the dirty needle and the
alligator arms,
Yeah.
the pussy arms.
exactly, man. The paraphernalia, even with marijuana, the smell of it, the black tar stuff. But fentanyl, it's a pill. I mean, and we've all been taking pills since we were old enough to take them, and there's no dirty connotation that comes along. So it's so much easier for the young people to take pills because it's just a pill. And it's in Adderall, Xanax, Oxy. So a lot of if you look at some of the most prescribed medications that there are in America, they're lacing those types of medicines with fentanyl. And if you were to hold a counterfeit Xanax in your hand and take one right out of the CVS bottle, you won't tell the difference.
And that's our new epidemic.
Yep.
Can you walk us through how, when you get a call, you get one of these overdose calls, and how your team investigates it? You show up and then just kind of play it out for us.
Okay, sure. So we normally get notified from patrol whenever there's somebody down from an overdose. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever. So we respond just like homicide would, with a crime scene and the medical examiner. And we'll do a scene investigation. Obviously, we're looking for, dope stuff, dope paraphernalia. Always a phone is a treasure trove. And we start working immediately on trying to ascertain who the dealer was, where they got their fentanyl from, and then in a perfect world, we'll do like a buy bust. We'll set up that dealer, and sometimes it doesn't happen textbook like that. So the investigation draws out, and then we'll do all the tricks of the trade. Matt knows I can't really. I mean, they're still out there doing this stuff, so I can't.
You don't want to show your cards.
Yeah,
I got it.
All the tricks all the stuff we're up to.
You haven't had the difficulty and the challenges of prosecution yet, and you said Arlington's about to kind of go that route, and you can sit back and watch, and you can learn from it, because that's you're going to have to, because this new law. I mean, it's new to everybody. In 10 years. Maybe 10 years, everybody would kind of have this down.
Right. And another option that we have, so that's a state murder charge that Governor Abbott gave us.
Okay.
But we also have you guys, anybody in here ever prosecuted somebody federally?
Yes.
Okay, so isn't it awesome?
No, it's great. You got all kinds of weird shit you could put out there.
And in Fort Worth we have, and I don't have this everywhere, but in Fort Worth we have what's called the rocket docket. And there are hard timelines. Within 2 days you have to do this, within 3 days you have to do this. I mean, boom, 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 and then they'll have the detention hearing. And a lot of times the people, if Fort Worth PD is going to take somebody federal, that means that the thresholds have been met and they're more than likely going to be detained waiting on trial. And it's a 90-day process, 3 months, boom, and they are done. They're sentenced, and then it's day for day for their time.
They're gone.
Yeah. As compared to the state process, where the courts, for whatever reason, allow all the shenanigans to go on, the officers to be berated by defense attorneys. The federal prosecution is awesome.
No, they move it along, and those detention hearings, that they get locked up until that court date hits, and usually there's not many resets. At the state level, there's so many resets on top of resets, and then sometimes it's a kind of a ploy too by some of these hooks. They get these lawyers, and they have them, and then the lawyer will milk them for money, go on, and they reset the case, and then they fire that attorney and they rehire, and then they're kind of starting from scratch and they're going. So some of these cases go years without.
There's just a lot of games.
Yeah, of course.
Not in the federal system.
No, they move it along very efficiently.
And so the feds. You remember when human trafficking was the big buzzword? The politicians were using it, and you had, all the soccer moms all up in arms about human trafficking. And not to sound all insensitive, but it's like, did y'all know what human trafficking is? Go talk to these prostitutes, and they wouldn't give up their pimp for nothing, And so it's another one of these. But anyway, so fentanyl, I think now is the new cool word. Yeah. And it's actually real, though,
Dying.
Yeah.
People are
absolutely
falling out.
And the wrong people are dying.
Yeah.
And so the feds and everybody's on board now. So we can now go with this state murder charge, or we can bring like ATF is knocking on my door like crazy. Hey, did that dealer have a gun? We'll take it federal. And I'm like, you know what? Yes, because here's a slam dunk gun case. You're talking to the Fentanyl Overdose Response Team, right? Mm-hmm. And we're gonna do a case with ATF. Why? Because in 90 days from now, he'll be in jail for 10 years. Or let's play this state game, right? And see where that leads us in 3 years from now.
No, I love the federal route, because also that can open up opportunities to, hey, you're looking at some real time, and you're going to be getting there very quickly. What can you give up to help yourself? And that can extend that expand that spider web of investigation. Yeah, go further, go higher up.
The Fed system is designed for them to work.
I am very interested. You're going to have to let me know when that Arlington case goes, because I want to follow that as well, just from a spectator position. Sure. I am now, because I don't do real police work anymore.
Okay, so I got a question, kind of going back to the twin thing. When, and we, like you said, we were next door neighbors, and I'd been an officer for about 4 years when you decided, man, I'm going to do this. And I wasn't necessarily trying to talk you into it heavily. Maybe I was, because it was so much fun, but I also knew that you were on a pretty solid track to being, wealthy and successful in the corporate America. So you didn't. You jumped into law enforcement, and even though we're at different departments, we've had parallel lives with, your critical incidents, shootings, all those type things, which, again, makes us the same as like we were, in childhood. So my question is, do you regret it? We've got layers of scar tissue at the end of this, and it's not over yet. And for me personally, I look back a lot and I'm like, man, he could have done a whole different life. To me, I didn't see that as an option. This was kind of my only option. But I'm wondering if you regret it.
I don't think I do. I guess if I knew then all the things I know now, if I had that crystal ball, would I have made the same decisions? Man, even in spite of what's happened to our profession, I think I still would have done it the same way, because I know the sheepdog mentality, that whole thing. I remember thinking, especially when I was in that high-speed, low-drag unit in SRT, I remember thinking all the time, man, I used to be a sheep. I used to be so much more of a sheep. And I'm proud that I'm not a sheep. Money, and there's also a concept with money that if you're in poverty, having money definitely affects your level of happiness. For sure. Nobody can pretend that it doesn't. When your day-to-day stress is gas in your car and food, but then once you make it to a threshold financially, there's no difference in your level of happiness. You could be a multi-millionaire or make $80,000 a year, or whatever that number is. I don't know. But and all the studies have shown there's no impact on your level of happiness or whatever. And so I think that Matt and I would have been separate had we not both been in this profession together. I think there would have been a pretty big disconnect, because it is hard. You just, like I said earlier, you're a cop or you're not. And even if you are identical twins, it's, it would still just be a separation.
Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up you. Down when you're lonely, I'll pull you up. Life leaves you heavy when the going gets tough. I'll be your shoulder, together we'll run up from the bottom, yeah, we'll rise above. Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. Sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far, for the gold and the blue, I'll never give up on you.